Keep them both in the tuck. Yes.
Welcome to the very first episode of ReFramed. I'm your host, Chad Tingle. I direct and produce documentaries, commercials, and all kinds of stuff in between. I've worked in film and video production for 20 years, and like most people in this field, I've learned a lot the hard way. This show is my chance to step back, reconnect with people I've worked with over the past 2 decades, and look at some of our old projects with fresh eyes. We'll talk about what went right, what went sideways, and how we've grown since then. I started Crown Street Films back in 2009. At the time, I was trying to get my ideas out there and tell stories that mattered to me. I didn't have a master plan, but I stubbornly believed that stories could change things, and maybe they still can. Over the years, I've made some things I'm proud of and some things that I now see as learning opportunities. I'm not here to pretend I have all the answers. I just want to share what I've learned, be honest about the process, and hopefully connect with folks who love storytelling as much as I do. So thank you for tuning in. We've got some great guests lined up, lots of stories to revisit, and some honest conversations ahead. I appreciate you being here. Let's get into it. The inaugural guest is my good friend and frequent collaborator, Eduardo Whaite. He's a multi-hyphenate creative who's a director of photography, a director, and a still photographer. Since 2020, I've witnessed his tremendous growth and his success. Every time we work together, I walk away with a newfound respect. He's also someone with whom I've had some very deep and meaningful conversations about creativity, the film business, and life. He also has incredible energy that rubs off on everyone around him. He's always enthusiastic about creating and ideating to make every project, big or small, the best it can be. Today, we'll discuss a project we worked on for the pharmaceutical and life science company Genentech back in 2022. I directed the project and Eduardo served as a director of photography. We recently collaborated on another project for Molson Coors, but I want to give that project some distance before revisiting it. We'll do that in another episode sometime in the future. We'll also discuss a narrative feature he shot in 2017 entitled Dylan and Zoe. Here's my conversation with Eduardo. Mr. Whaite, we're rolling.
How you doing?
Welcome, sir. Thank you, man. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
coming. I'm doing pretty good. You had a good weekend?
It was a good weekend. It was Easter weekend. It was fun. Family and friends. It was good.
Cool. So it's an interesting time in the business. There's just a lot of stuff going on. So I felt like you would be the right person to be sort of the inaugural guest of this experiment. If I think back over the last couple of years, I think I'm starting to have some really deep conversations with friends and collaborators who I've worked with for a long time. But I think probably I've had most of them with you because we traveled a couple of times, I think, in the last couple of years where we just kind of had time in the car to kind of talk about stuff and really kind of reflect on growth and where we want to be, where we want to go. I think I've also kind of just noticed this since 2020, this exponential growth in you. You know, I feel like you've kind of figured out some processes and I would say some hacks, not just creatively, but I think technologically, that it's been really inspiring to me because even though I've been doing this 25 years, I feel like I'm in a place where I want to keep growing and I want to keep learning. I don't want to become stagnant regardless of wherever I am. So part of the reason for doing this is because I was having these conversations with not only you, but other people just about growth, where the technology is going. And it really kind of gave me a chance to think about, okay, if I want to be a better director, there's no better thing than being able to look back at the past work that you've done and really pick it apart, right? And really kind of figure out what you can do better, where you can grow, where you made the mistakes, even the mistakes that other people don't see, but also too, like just how we think about approaches to projects. So the project we're going to talk about from my side, and then we'll talk about this other project, this film that you DP'd. But the project I want to talk about is this project we did in 2022. When I talk about that project is because I was thinking there's so much opportunity now for branded films and branded content, right? And so you kind of have to push the envelope. They sort of have to be more cinematic. The storytelling has to be better because it's kind of what people have come to expect. And so, although I think this project we did for Genentech turned out okay, I've been thinking back and watching it and just thinking about how I could have made it better, maybe some suggestions I could have made to the clients. So to give a little background, the project was for Genentech. It was supposed to be sort of this corporate branded film, and it was going to be used for internal communications for them to be able to expand their political action committee, which is through that committee is how they do outreach, right? And so the goal was to try to do this internal campaign to get employees to sign up for the political action committee, because that's how they lobby Congress and state governments in order to get their drugs more exposure that they may have in the research phase. What do you remember about the project? I actually wanted to ask you that. What do you remember about that experience before I go a little bit deeper?
I remember that we were tight on schedule and resources, and we had to figure out how to best utilize the brief time that we had to be able to, like, because we were interviewing top level executives at Genentech, and we had to make these interviews on location, which by the way was a great location. I have to say it's like one of the most beautiful
Amazing.
office spaces I've ever been. So I
Yeah.
think we were pretty fortunate on the location, but we were also limited by the location. There's people around. There's certain offices that you can't use. Certain areas that were off limits. A lot of foot traffic. So we were not only recording the interviews, we were also recording B-roll to supplement, the footage and the interviews. And I remember we had one gaffer, right? And then one assistant. That was it. This gaffer was doing everything. And we were
Yeah.
hauling everything on this hamper. And we had just one key light, and we had a little bit of I can't remember what it was actually, but it was either some sort of Leco or a
Yeah.
similar thing.
Yes. And I think we'd use a sky panel as well in some instances.
The sky panel was the key light that we used. We draped the diffusion in front a few times whenever we had the space to do it. If not, it was just the chimera and the grid. But it was pretty minimal. I think the key for that shoot was to find the perfect location to embrace the light that we already had and just amplify with the little that we were able to. I mean, from my memory, I haven't watched that footage in a while, but my memory of it is it turned out pretty beautiful.
Yeah, it did. And it's interesting you brought up the whole thing about, like, we had this amazing location, but we were also limited by the location, because as I go back and I revisit it, I think for me, it wasn't so much the shoot or the end product, given the resources that we had, the budget that we had. I think the thing for me was, how could I have talked them into doing something a little bit different? And what I mean by that is, like, okay, so we shot these really great interviews. They all look great. But then when you need supporting footage for the interview, and we had really great spaces to stage the sort of quote unquote B-roll, but it felt like it had no intention, right? I think probably the thing that had the most intention is when you told that guy, hey, just walk down the stairs, I'm going to follow you. And I think that when we start doing these branded pieces, it's really easy to sort of set somebody up in a really nice background, light them, they have their laptop, right? And they're on their laptop, and you get close-ups and you get wides. And I think we even got an overhead of one person, which made it better, right? But what I find really limiting is that, like, if we're not exactly engaging these people in their workplace and finding a way to be creative around what they're actually doing versus staging the quote unquote B-roll, then it just feels
generic. It feels generic. I feel you.
It feels generic.
And you're making a good point. You're making me think right now that, yeah, intention is always a nice thing to have. I think it's a luxury in a way, and especially in projects like this. I don't know how much time you had in pre-pro and how much you would have been allowed to capture certain specific actions. I remember there was one lady that she was there, and the B-roll that we got was just her getting up and walking out because she had to leave. Like, it's not like, all right, I'm done. And we were like, okay, follow her through the thing and try to get whatever we could.
Yeah.
Because she was actually leaving, didn't have any more time. So, but I do feel like, okay, if you have some sort of scripted idea on how this narrative piece is going to go, it makes sense, like, because it would feel different. Like, the pack is moving you forward, pushing employees forward. So we're going to record all the guys walking towards the destination. And then the arrival should feel this way. Yeah, I guess it would have a deeper impact or visually a more profound meaning when you have intentionality in the footage that you're capturing versus just trying to get what you can,
And I feel like it's maybe something I want to start to push for more when I'm working with people in the future, resources are always going to be a thing, but I think the key thing is like, how can we really set up these really amazing scenarios, light them well, but still make them feel real, like someone's actually doing something that I think will enhance the piece and make it that much better, just tell the story that much better, versus just like, okay, we're just going to do this traditional corporate video. I think I've done a few of those, and every time I feel like, as I look at other companies or look at stuff on YouTube, there's just so much stuff, branded stuff that's being done really well. When you give the filmmaker the control and you give them the space to kind of say, okay, let me craft something, I feel like that's something that I wish we had gotten the opportunity to do on that. And I was thinking about it, I was like, even if we'd been able to do more stuff outside, although it was like incredibly cold, it was still a beautiful campus that we probably could have done some other things. Even sticking somebody in a car, sometimes I find for these things, if you, work out really well, because it also just shows movement. I feel like when you're static and the camera has to be static, and like you were saying before, where you're not moving forward, it feels just like, okay, this looks great, right? But I'm not really gaining anything else from it. And I think that that's something I've been thinking about a lot in the last, I would say, year. I do traditional documentary stuff, but I also get called on to sort of do some branding stuff. And I'm just wondering maybe how you've approached other branding projects that you guys have been working on, or that you've been working on either as a DP or as a director. What are you seeing that's different, and what are you trying to do to change the space or make the work that much better?
So we've been thinking of these films as there has to be like a motif, just an overarching element that binds the whole piece together and makes it coherent from beginning to end, with something outside of just the interview or the setup or the lighting. You know, um, it's not even a question of like, we could be different framings and everything, but there's got to be something that just binds the whole piece together with all the characters that we're filming. So things that we've done is like we did one for the National Kidney Foundation where we used a projector, and projector was projecting, words on their faces and their bodies, and and that was kind of like that was, and the interviews were different. That we shot some interviews on a couch, we shot some interviews next to a window, we shot some interviews next to a backdrop, and we kind of also kept those interviews separate. So the people on the backdrop were doctors, the people on the couch were patients, and the people on the other side were donors. So that also creates like a visual language, like, oh, if they're sitting on a couch, we already connect, we know they're, the patients, the people that were recipients. The orange backdrop, already we know they're doctors, because we've established this sort of language, visual language, right? And then they're all connected together by this artifact of the light being projected onto their skin or their faces or their backdrop with words and quotes and stuff. So I feel like that creates some sort of unique visual language that when you look at it, you understand that there's something specific, something unique, something that is speaking a very specific message. I don't know if that's redundant for me to say, but yeah, it's like you're visually seeing something that is telling you got to pay attention to understand what's happening here.
Yeah.
Versus something more generic. But again, I don't think we always have the time to do stuff like this, because it's so some projects are just, you got to run with it.
Yeah.
There's not enough time to really process and make stuff like this,
No, for sure, for sure. Going back to that too, my goal was also just to try to deliver this thing in a timely fashion, in the sense I was playing director and producer. So it was also about working around people's schedules. But I want to revisit what you said about motif and intention, because I think regardless of the time factor that you have with people, we probably could do some of these things. I guess it's a matter of trying to push for it. Are you pushing for that stuff with your client? Are they coming to you and saying, hey, tell us what you think? Do you have some flexibility in the decision making? I didn't have as much, and that was something that I learned from. As I'm getting older, I'm realizing that, when you get the cracks at things and the swings at things, it's okay to push, as long as you're doing it in a respectful way, with trying to elevate the project as much as possible, not just for myself and my growth, but also for the client. So Are you finding that you're in situations, and when I say you guys, I should mention your partner, Josh, that you work with. Are you guys finding opportunities where you can push your vision on the client, or is the client then coming to you and say, no, take the reins and run with it, and we trust you? How's that balancing out?
Well, that doesn't happen all the time. We have developed a really good relationship with a few of our clients where it is flowing in that way, where we get the idea or we get the concept and they're like, just, do it, and we believe in you and we trust that you're going to come back with exactly what we need and more. But we just shot a spot last week and it wasn't the case. We submitted a location that was the actual location that we needed to use, and the agency came back saying it was the first time that we were working with this agency, and they were like, no, we need more options. We need to present two more options, so we need three options. So we picked two other options. They were okay, but compared to the actual location that we're proposing, the main one, they were mediocre in comparison. But of course, they picked them, and we were like, oh, damn. And we pushed back. We were like, okay, listen, you picked the wrong one. I don't know why. The reason was it was a little bit too far for them. They wanted to stay in Miami. They didn't want to drive up to, Fort Lauderdale or Davie or whatever. So I get that there's always other ulterior motives and reasons that are not necessarily pertaining to the project or what's going to come through in camera, which is part of the managerial aspect of the business. I think you got to manage certain expectations. You got to manage clients and talents needs and wants so that it all fits together and you can, fulfill the vision while also catering to their desires personally. But yeah, we pushed back on this one. We're like, listen, we can go with a shitty location, but we'll make our best effort to make it work. There were like 18 people from the agency plus client. There's not enough for the client and the agency to come in and sit down. It's going to be uncomfortable. There's only one bathroom. We don't have enough resources in our department to come in and set up entire kitchen and the living room and the backyard, and they needed a fence and the whole thing. So it was a very ambitious project that without the proper resources of money, it's just, you need the right locations. I think it's a balancing act because in Genentech, we didn't have the time with them, but we were so nimble and small, and we could reposition and shift so quickly, So like the shoot that we did last week, the one I'm talking about, it required a full camera department, G&E, the whole thing. So to move from one setup to the other, it's a big ask. It's an overhaul. A lot of parts are moving, a lot of things you're shifting. If this same shoot that we had last week had been done on a smaller scale, because it could have been 100% doable, but then, you don't get the follow focus, you don't get the fancy lenses, you don't get the fancy camera. But then, I guess it all depends on when where you're at with client expectations of what the shoot should be. I guess that's what it's all about today, for me at least. I think it's more of a managerial role to assess like what's needed to make things happen, rather than this is the camera and I just want this to look beautiful, because it's not necessarily that.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting enough, one of the things we talked about a lot, I think, since you brought up equipment on that trip, it was kind of the first time that I'd seen you sort of really use this Sony workflow, which you and Josh have sort of like really adopted. And by the way, I'm not doing any advertising for Sony. It's really more about just pace and speed and adaptability that I've even bought into it in terms of the camera that I now own as well. I remember calling you for the project, and I said, hey, what do we do? At the time I still owned my Blackmagic. So I was like, hey, do we use my Blackmagic camera and then we get another one? And you were like, no. You were like, you were like, this is the way to go. Lack of resources, very small, very nimble, to the point where like, we had one camera locked off and then you operated the other camera on a monopod. So talk a little bit about how you got into that workflow, what led you down that road, because this was the first time I really saw you. I knew you owned the cameras, but this was the first time I really saw you like really put the workflow to the test, right?
Yeah.
On a small project. Like you said, it's me, it's you, it's a gaffer. an audio guy and a PA. That's it, right? So talk about how you got to the workflow that you did. And I know it's since 2022, it's changed even more based on the recent project we just did for Cores, which we'll have to get together another time once that project has a little bit of age, come back and talk about that project, because that was also kind of unique in its own way. But I want to talk about what led you down the rabbit hole to kind of come up with this workflow. I've really actually kind of seen it almost sort of enhance your ability in terms of the productivity, but also the quality of the work you're delivering as a DP. Talk a little bit about that and how you arrived at that place.
That's a long story. I'm going to try to shorten it because I think that's a whole case study in and of itself. I think we should perhaps talk about this further as well. But this was a project that we were shooting for Zumba, or it came about because of a project that we were shooting for Zumba. They had this beautiful idea called Letter to My Instructor. So Zumba is a fitness brand that caters to anyone and everyone who wants to get fit and feel good about themselves. And they have a really incredible community across the world of people that are truly engaged in this way of life, in a way. Like, they're just dancing and having a great time, and they go, and it's like the hour that they spend, but they created like a tight bond with their instructors, right? Their Zumba instructors. And internally Zumba recognized this, and they were like, we want to create this project where a student writes a letter to the instructor, and we want to, celebrate the instructors, right? So it was going to happen in Florida. The budget was very limited. And we were going to shoot a couple of classes here in Florida, and that was it. And then we sat down and we thought about it, and we're like, well, if this is a letter, it would be really cool to see the reach of Zumba as a whole and make it more documentary and less commercial.
Mm-hmm.
So we proposed back to not shoot it as a regular spot with, lighting and this and that, but for Josh and I to just travel across America and visit different gyms and instructors and students and interview them in their place of existence in different communities, and just observe like just the breadth of diversity that exists within a Zumba class. So they bought into it. They thought it was a great idea. So here we were, like, okay, we're taking our Red, and we took your 8mm camera. We asked for a borrow. So we wanted to do this mixed media thing. We took like a little GoPro, and then when we got there, our first point of arrival was LA, and when we got there, we look at all these cases and all this shit. Like, we had been talking for a while about experimenting with the Sony and would it work, would it not work? And then we were looking at all this stuff, and we're like, damn, bro, maybe this is the project where we should try the Sony with the autofocus, because this is going to be brutal. So we got one. We bought it at Sammy's. We landed, we went to Sammy's, bought the camera, bought the two zoom lenses, the 24-70 and the 70-200. And then we went off. It was just literally just the camera with the lenses and a couple of batteries. That's literally all we got. And as we progressed throughout this shoot, I can't remember how long it took, but I mean, we were all over the place. We're in LA, San Francisco, Sacramento, Texas, Connecticut, New York, Philadelphia. Like, we traveled all across, and we started using more and more the little camera with the autofocus, and it was phenomenal. It was just remarkable. It didn't have any competition.
It provided you like a freedom, right? That you were like sort of like kind of like, when I see you talk about it now, and you specifically talk about all the equipment like just sitting around on the floor and just trying to figure out how are two people going to operate all this. It seems like this provided you a freedom that you guys had been kind of yearning for.
Yeah, and I mean, we were both shooting at the same time. So we would shoot, one was shooting with the Red and the other one was shooting with the FX3 at the same time, because we shot interviews, we shot class footage, we shot B-roll of the students and the instructors out in the world, and we shot it with both. It was kind of the idea to do a mixed media spot where you would get a sense of just a dynamic visual feel where there's just different textures and different compositions, and that was kind of like the idea. But as we were shooting, like Josh would be on the red and like holding this huge, oh, look at all the fireworks. Just would be with the red and like, oh, holding this camera, oh, 50 pounds. And I would be like on this little thing, just like floating around, coming in, and everything's in focus. Josh is like, crushing the barrel and being like, ah. And I'm just like, and then also you have 120 frames per second where autofocus is 120 frames per second at 4K with full autofocus capability. It was like, what have we been doing? Especially for projects that don't have a budget or you need certain things. It's just perfect. And it scaled up into becoming kind of like the weapon of choice for so many projects because
Yeah.
it saves you money in the camera department that you can then put on in front of the camera, which really makes a huge difference. Like I'm not saying that we just shot the commercial on the Alexa. I left. It's a phenomenal camera. If you have to pick, or at least for me, if I have to pick between getting a better location, get more art department, or a better wardrobe, or a better cast, rather than shooting with the best lenses and the best camera, but then I'm shooting a shitty location. There's no real relation to me, Like
Yeah.
I have a beautiful camera and beautiful lenses, and I'm shooting a shitty location. I'm still shooting a shitty location, So it's not
Yeah.
gonna look that beautiful if this is what I got. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. Where you have all the elements of the project, right? Because usually when I talk to people about stuff that's more scripted, I would say, hey, the elements you focus on are wardrobe, art direction, lighting, right? Those things really help to enhance a project. But I think what was great was when I saw you literally doing the work. Not that that was the intention for me, is to have you doing the work of 3 people, but I saw how flexible it was that I could even pick it up maybe and use it. It didn't feel complex to me,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I could pick up the camera and I could go shoot something, which is a certain freedom to that. But I think the other thing for me too, it was actually really sort of like when I got the nurses film, Everybody's Work, which I'll talk about in a future episode. The fact that we had done that project together is actually what really said to me like, hey, we're going to go Sony, because it was a similar thing. I had to fly all around the country, visit these different people. My DP was somebody who's kind of works both ways. Sometimes he's works with an AC, an AC, and other times he's happy to pick the camera up and pull focus on the barrel of the lens. But I also knew that I wanted to shoot something in a way where it'd be very intimate and up close. So like the autofocus capability for me was sort of like a no-brainer. And also because I had done the post on the Genentech project, it was really an eye-opener for me. I was like, oh, wow, okay, I can start cutting right away. I'm not transcoding. I'm not doing anything like that. So aside from the freedom and the autofocus, was there anything else where like you're like, okay, after that project, you're like, we're leaning into this full force?
Oh my, well, so many things, man. Like I feel like I fell victim to the equipment situation, right? Like, it's got to be the best equipment. Like I want to shoot with the Panavision cameras and the Panavision lenses and the H series and and I've done it and it's amazing, but it's so convoluted and it's such a huge undertaking, to go through all these things. And then you're very limited. You're limited there was a great interview with Gareth Edwards, right? The guy that shot The Creator. He shot The Creator on FX3s. That was it.
Yep.
So he was like, I'm gonna completely mess this up. It's not completely accurate, but it's kind of like the gist of the thing. He had like 8 cameras, and each camera had a different setup. So he had like one camera on a gimbal. He had one camera on a Steadicam. He had one camera completely bare bones and just for handheld use. He had one camera shoulder. He had one camera on a Libra head, ready to go on the crane and whatever. So he had all these cameras ready to go so that he could change the shot at a moment's notice. And each camera is like each setup was what, like less than $10,000. So all the 8 cameras together are the cost of just one Alexa. You know what I mean? And he's like, okay, this shot is great, but actually, I think this would be better if it's on a steady and we do this move. Okay, steady, boom, go. Or actually, I'm
Yeah.
gonna come in, give me the handheld thing, and he just grabs the rig and just, does this. That is remarkable. And then
Yeah.
not only that, but then this camera also allows you to shoot at 12,800 as a native ISO. So when you think about that, the incredible amount of things that you can do with, so it's basically you're cutting light now instead of having to fill the space. It's remarkable. It just saves you so much time and money and effort. You're shooting at 12,800 native ISO is remarkable. It's just unbelievable. All of a sudden you've unlocked this potential that you can now with a 1200 LED light, you can just create insanely beautiful looking shots that would look way more expensive than what they actually are. Or if you wanted to do that with the Alexa, you would have to spend so much more money. You need a generator, you need a 9K, a 12K. You're doing it now with a 1.2K, or a 2.4K. That's it.
No, for sure. And I watched the interview where it was really a director also who just wanted freedom. So sort of had made these 2 films before on his own, like road films, and really just wanted to kind of grab the camera and just go and not wait, because he had a very immediate vision of the story in his head. And then the idea of waiting for 8 Alexas to be set or even 3 to be set, and then an AD and a crew and all that stuff was just going to completely limit the process. And I thought the same thing as I was prepping for the doc, was kind of like, okay, we could shoot this with an Alexa and we could shoot it on a red and I could have an AC pull focus and it could look amazing. But then I think the difference for me was I wanted to make it look like a film and not look like content, right? So if I revisit Genentech as a project, I see that as content because it was being used for a very specific purpose. Without going too deep in the rabbit hole on the other project, the workflow really opened my eyes to a lot of what's possible. At this point, I kind of want to, before we get into the segment where you talk about the project that you're going to talk about, because part of this process is for us to kind of both revisit a project that we've worked on, but also something that you worked on in the past that if you had the chance to redo today, your approach should be totally different. So before we get into that, I kind of want to talk about your background a little bit, how you got into this world. And I know a lot of people who are formally educated, but I also know a lot of people who are self-taught like you are. Yeah. And I find that a lot of the people who are self-taught really bring this other form of creativity to the process because they're not formally trained. Right? No one ever told them that this is wrong. Right? No one ever said, this is not the right way to do this. They just kind of figured out through trial and error and obstacles and, finding out what works for them workflow wise, just like you talked about switching to the Sony cameras. So I just want to talk a little bit about how you kind of got into this world and really, how you've been able to get to the levels where you are over the last, say, 10 years since I've known you.
Oh my God, dude. Okay. So I got into it because I started a company that was selling sports accessories. And I needed photography and graphic design and just advertising content for my own brand to sell my products. And when I started bidding and asking around, like for a photographer, would be like, oh yeah, you want to do this billboard stuff, and it's like $10,000. So I was like, whoa, that's like the entire budget for everything. Are you kidding me? Like, this is ridiculous. I can't do that. It's like, and I was starting out, so it was like a startup, a fresh company. Like, it was insane. So I kept on looking, trying to find. Like, I was like, if it's $10,000, I'll do it myself. Like, this makes no sense. And I found a friend of ours. She was a model. She was like, I have this great photographer. He takes photos of me all the time. He's phenomenal. He's super creative. And his name is Mike Tang. And people know him as Orangutan now. If you look him up on Instagram, he's Orangutan. And I met with him and we connected. He was super fun, filled with life, and very creative guy. And he's like, I can do it for you, and I'll do the website. He coded in Flash, so he offered a full package with casting the models, going to the shoot. He shot in like 4 different locations, amazing. And he made it happen. I can't really remember what the budget was, but I can tell you it was like maybe $3,000 for the entire thing, for the website, the photos, the models, the travel, everything. So after that shoot, it came out and it was so good. The website was so beautiful. I was like, we have to partner up. Like, this is it. Like, we partner up. This next division will do photos and videos and content for us. We were not really actually talking about video. That's a lie. It was just graphics and graphic design and stuff and photos. So we did partner up. And then a few months into our partnership, he was like, listen, we were in Venezuela back then. So he's like, listen, bro, I would love to continue this, but I can't live here anymore. I'm going to move to Miami. So if you want to continue the partnership, it would have to be over there. And I was like, ah, shit. And after a quick thought, I was like, okay, maybe it's a way to expand and have a foot in America, and maybe we can start this business there. And the cool thing about Mike was he was always pushing the envelope for something new, just so like, oh, we got this thing, and it's like, I'm moving to America. Fuck. Okay, then he was here, and we started doing photos. Like, now we're doing video. Like, bro, we don't know how to do a video. What are you talking about? No, video's the future. Video's the future. We gotta do video. Like, how the fuck are we gonna do? Like, we don't know anything about videos, bro. So we're like looking on Wikipedia, like how to make a video. Like, we made a music video. Our first thing was a music video for a Venezuelan band, and we're looking at the office. We're like, how to make a video, and like gaffer, grip, and we're like looking, what is a gaffer? What is a grip? So for that music video, we had like, I don't know, like maybe 30 crew members, but we had a script supervisor for a rock and roll music video. It makes no sense. Like, we had a first AD, second AD. We had everything that was listed in Wikipedia on how to shoot a film. We had it on set. Like, we booked everybody. And we were like, we looked up like, what's the best camera? It's like, oh, the red one. That's like the thing. So we had to have, like, we hired the red one and we shot it on the red one. And at this time, I had no clue on anything. I was just looking things online and like just reading what was needed and just putting it in there. Looking back, it was ridiculous. It was such a waste of money and resources, and it just made no sense. Dude, we shot with this. I can't remember. It was like a 6K. It melted the glass from the double window. You know, like it popped like bubbles on the glass because it was so hot. It's like, oh my god, bro! I hope like the guys from the apartment don't realize. It was a mess. It was such a shit show, but it turned out really well, and we won some awards for that music video. And that was the beginning, you know? And then one thing led to another. We had another music video we were shooting, and Mike couldn't come in to direct, and he was like, "You direct." I'm like, "Bro, what you talking about? Like, how the fuck am I gonna direct? I have no idea." It's like, it doesn't matter, bro. You just go in there and you tell them what to do, and people will do what they tell them to, you know? Like, and I'll guide you. We're gonna talk about the shot list, and this is what you need to get. So I ended up directing this music video, and I got hooked. I was like, damn, this feels good, you know? Like, you telling some, you just ask and things happen.
Yeah.
And in a way, it is kind of like that. And then the more you learn, or the more I learned, the more refined things got. And then I remember talking with Mike. It's like, if you're really into this directing thing, I suggest you start taking photos. Because I think on the photos, if you're able to direct the person through the photo in one frame, I think you're going to be able to grasp something
Yeah.
on how
Yeah.
to. So, because you're telling a story in just one frame, you'll be able to expand that into something. So I was
It's
like, okay,
actually
I'll start
harder with
taking.
a photo. It's actually much
It
harder with a
is.
photo. Yeah.
It
If you
is.
get
So
it.
I
Yeah.
so I started taking photos, and that's how it became a thing. So I started taking photos, and I became sort of a photographer of sorts. And I really fell in love with all the technicality of lighting, and just how it affects the space and the face and the skin, and how it reacts to different, fabrics and materials, and how the light bounces off of, different textures and objects, and the difference between artificial light and natural light and daylight and nighttime and exposure. All this stuff it became just kind of like a drug, bro. I was so excited about learning all this shit, and it became a thing. And ultimately, I decided I'm gonna be a cinematographer. Like, this is what I just wanna shoot and become a DP. And it was really nice in the sense that it evolved into being a problem solver. So like, people come, I have a problem. It's like, okay, let me just mathematically figure out how to solve this problem. So it's got like both sides. It's a creative side on how to make things a certain way, and you're creatively assessing a location, time of day, the person in front of the lens, what type of camera, what type of lens, like a lot of micro decisions that end up making a big whole. But then also, you're struggling with a budget and money and time, and so it's intricate and it's fun. It became really, really fun. So I kind of like dedicated my time into that for I don't know 10 years, and then here we are. I don't know, maybe this is 15 years after that, but for 10 years I only did. I said like I'm gonna DP, I'm gonna DP, and then I also direct from time to time, and I enjoy it. And now with Octopus, it's kind of like a hybrid where it's Josh was my partner, and we kind of like tag team, and we tackle. We're almost like on the same wavelength in a way that I'll tackle this part, he's on the other side, and I know that's taken care of. He knows this is taken care of, and then we'll switch it at one point, and then he'll go another place, and I'll shoot this, and so it's a really interesting dynamics on our sets. It's a little different from most sets. I don't even know what we were talking about, other
No,
than
no, no.
how I got started.
You're talking about, yeah, no, it's a great story because it's funny enough. One of the things I think about in our conversations and just if I call you about a project, how you spoke about Mike, right? And how Mike was just like, no, 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 we'll do it, was kind of like a lot of times when I call you and I'm like, we have this problem. I don't know how I'm going to get over this. You're like, no, no, fuck it. We'll figure it out. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. And there's like this sort of infectious kind of part of your personality that comes across. I'm like, yeah, okay. After talking to him, I'm like, yeah, okay, we'll figure it out. And a lot of times I'm like,
nothing
I'm
was
like,
impossible for Mike, bro. For Mike, nothing. And we had a studio in Midtown, and we used to meet every day. And there was this thing that he started saying, which it became a funny thing for us to say. I'm sure nobody listening to this will laugh because it's not a laughable thing, but we made fun of it, and we said it every day. It's like, you're your own break, man. You're your own break, and whatever was on the docket, it's like, well, you're your own break, because it's a thing that happens in the mind that you're just like, oh, but what about the money? What about the camera? You're your own break, bro. And it's like,
yeah, it's true.
fuck.
It's absolutely,
okay. So
it's true. It's like saying you're your worst enemy. It's
Yeah.
absolutely, it absolutely is true, because I think a lot of times too, I think for me, what goes in my head is like, okay, how can I make it the best that it can be? But then, like you said, you have limits, right? It's either a limitation from a client, limitation from an agency, a limitation of the budget, a limitation of, there's limitations everywhere. And then at some point, those limitations introduce doubt. But it's funny to see you kind of talk about Mike in that way, because whenever I talk to people about you, I talk to them about you in that way.
I learned a lot from him, dude. Like I kind of like fell in love I fell in love with this industry, and I fell in love with the crafting of images and telling stories and creating things because of him. That's the truth.
Yeah.
He kind of like was this infectious, passionate person that just infused this thing in my way. Like taking photos, the way that I take photos is so much aligned with the way that I learned, just because being next to him. You know what I mean? Like it was just this thing. I have my own style now, of my own way of what I like, and it's my personality. But there's a way in my execution that is like in the core, the essence. It's what I learned on my early days with Mike, and
That's
and
awesome,
it's
man.
it's it's pretty cool. And I think we fed off each other too. There was a lot of structure in my process, and a lot of analytical, logical thinking that I would bring to the table. And Mike is incredibly logical too, but he was very artistic at that moment. He was like fighting for that, and I was like fighting for the logical, and we kind of complemented. And
Yeah.
I feel like that balance is key for, at least in today's industry. Maybe back in the day, 20 years ago, I don't know. I didn't live it, but I think maybe back in the day you could be just full on creative and fuck logic. But now I don't think you can,
Yeah, no, for sure. I almost kind of feel like at this point now, because everything we're doing, there's not really any traditional distribution medium anymore, right? So I feel like you can say fuck it and break the rules a lot more. When I first got in the business, even working as a PA, we were still shooting on film. So you really couldn't say fuck it, because, like film costs a certain amount of money, right? You had to shoot on it, you had to develop it, then you had to color, you had to transfer. The democratization that we have now with the technology that we have, you really couldn't, because you didn't have a chance to go back and redo it. I remember even in film school, film was such a, oh my God, we only have this much of it to expose this much. So you really can't try. And only the people who were really, really like fearless really broke the rules. Where I feel like now we're in an age where everyone can break the rules. But, in that sense, it probably it's probably a great lead into what I wanted you to talk about is this film that you DP'd. I don't know how long now, but the film has gotten some distribution. It was in festivals, right? It's gotten some acclaim, which is kind of how I look at things. The things for me that have given me more exposure as a director or as a producer, like whether it's broadcast or in a really big festival, those are the things I pick apart the most, right? I'm like, when I, like when I go to film festivals for any of my films, I never sit. I probably now I do it because if my kids are with me, but when I would go to things on my own or would just be with another filmmaker or whatever, I would stand outside in the hallway because that edit that I know I didn't get perfect or that shot that I had to cut way too early or the timing of something just makes me like sick inside, which I think is why I came up with this idea to kind of have this show. So talk a little bit about how you got into that film, right? It's out in the world. And I want to kind of hear what you would do differently if we were redoing this today.
Oh my God, dude. I would shoot it entirely different. That's a project that shaped me in so many ways. So I got into the film because the producer, actor called me and we had a great friendship on my time in LA. He studied at the same acting school, Stella Adler, than my brother. So like we had a really good group of guys that and I would shoot auditions for them and we would just I shot headshots for all these guys. He decided to produce this film with the director. His name is Blake Lewis, the producer actor that's on the film. So he gives me a call one day. He's like, I was in New York shooting at the time. He's like, I see you're in New York. Let's meet up for a coffee. I got something that I want to talk to you about. So I was like, great. So we met at this place called Veselka that people that know. It's like this Ukrainian restaurant, like classic cafeteria style. You can get like pierogies and stuff. It's really good. So we met at Cafe Veselka.
And what time
And
period is this?
when we met was 2017.
Okay.
So we met in 2017, and he tells me about this movie that he's producing that he would love for me to DP. And he's like, if you're into it, it's a very small budget. We're gonna make this happen. I'm producing it with like a fund and that I've put together, yada yada. I'll share the script if you and let me know what you think. I was like, perfect, this is amazing. So I read the script on my flight back to Miami. Actually, no, I was flying to LA, sorry. I read the script on my flight to LA. And as I was reading it, I finished the script and then I was online looking for references and it just sparked my imagination. I landed really excited about the possibility of shooting a movie and being involved in a narrative film, or a narrative project. And I landed, I was like, oh my God, I know exactly how I want to shoot this. I imagined like what's this? Richard Linklater.
Yeah. The Ethan Hawke and Julie Dempsey. Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this is a great reference for this, and we would be like da da da. And then I landed, and I called Blake, and I was like, yo, this is incredible. I love the script. It's really intimate. I think I could do something with this, and I'd love to have a vibe check with the director and get to know him and see what the deal is. He puts us in contact and I have a phone call with the director and I told him like, yo, like I read the script. I think it's beautiful. It's incredibly personal. The director tells me, it's based on my life. So it's very important to me. It's very personal. It's like, oh, fuck it. It's a heavy story. It's not a easy thing to portray. It's like sexual abuse, drama, get together. It's Go watch the film. It's beautiful. But the director's called Matt Sauter. So I had a great conversation with Matt. I told him about the references that I had thought about, and I sent him this whole deck of visuals. And he was like, I can't believe you're sending me this because my inspiration was before before sunrise, before like the series, the trilogy, whatever. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. Like we connected, like I read the thing and we connected on what we were thinking on how to shoot this. And initially this shoot was going to take place in New York. That was the idea. But because of budget constraints, it was impossible.
Yeah.
And so we ended up filming in LA and we shot
What's
it.
the name of the film?
It's called Dylan and Zoe.
Okay.
Dylan and Zoe. So it's two friends. Blake Lewis is the main actor, and Claudia Dumi is the lead actress. Claudia is one of the cast ensemble cast for The Boys in the Amazon, show. So that also helped us, get a little traction on the film. Blake is also a phenomenal actor. He's in a movie right now. I think it's a Netflix, Trial by Fire by Ed Zwick, like Ed Zwick's latest film.
Wow. Yep.
These two guys crushed it, and the director was his first film. Also crushed his first film. I think
Do you feel like you
looking
didn't
back,
crush it?
I mean, I crushed it for what it was, but I mean, I can tell you right now that I didn't crush it for what I think. Like looking back, I didn't crush it at all. I made the best choices that I could at the time with the knowledge that I had, and at the end of the day, I think it's the knowledge that I had. Because if I had the knowledge that I have now and the understanding of, I mean, the FX3s were not available in 2018. You know what I mean? So they came out, I think, in 2020. That's like the FX3 time. But
Yeah.
there was the Sony, whatever it's called, the camera that shoots at 12,800, which is the same sensor, by the way, like the
Yeah.
photo camera.
Like the AS7.
Yeah, A7S3.
Yeah.
That's what it's called.
A7S3. Yep.
So I think the A7S3 or the A7S2 was available during that time, but I was in my head with this idea that it had to be cinematic. So I had the red, and it had to be on the red, and it had to. So again, I was my own break. You know what I mean? So it's got to be like, and we've got the red, so why not? You know what I mean? Like let's go full on and shoot this raw and make this great. And boy, was that not the best option, because it strained production, because it's heavy files. It's terabytes upon terabytes. It's a heavy camera. It's it requires a lot to shoot with this camera. If I could shoot this again, I would shoot it on the FX3, 100%, like hands down.
Is there anything else, I mean, in terms of like, lighting and the look,
Yeah, well,
are
everything.
there other things like that you feel like, okay, I've improved my skill set in that sense in terms of what my approach is for projects like that?
Yeah, 100%. Like again, part of the biggest problem was I was shooting with the red, and anything past realistically, anything past 1600 ISO, it's terrible. It looks like shit. We're shooting on the helium, so man, yeah, you got to really light it up. So we shot it on the helium and the sig, which were perfect. That was versatile. To fit. And but at the end of the day, like there was a lot of learnings. There were a lot of learnings, and a lot of great stuff happened. Like there was the last scene that we shot was this scene on a baseball park, and we had set up to shoot there at 8 o'clock at night, and we had this whole thing set up, and then all of a sudden, dude, the lights on the park start to go off. Poof, poof, like fuck, poof, poof. I'm like, oh my god, dude, what are we gonna like? Done. Like we were counting on the big lights to light the scene, and they just started to go down, and we start to move from one place to the other, and then poof, this lights go down, and then just poof, the lights go down. I'm like, fuck. And then Blake was like, he was about to call. He's like, okay, guys, we're gonna have to do a reshoot, at some point, maybe in a week or so. We'll find time. And I started to get like this anxiety, bro. Like, oh my god, like there's no way. Like we have to figure out a way to do this. So I had my Canon 1.2, 50 millimeter, and it's like, fuck it, we're gonna do it here. Let's go over there. Let's put this lens on 1.2. Carlos was on the like my secret weapon is Carlos Lopez. He's like my right hand man. He's been my right hand man since that day. He's like, put this 1.2, boom, and I had this little China ball that we connected to this little generator that we had, and that was it. So on a broomstick, holding this China ball overhead in the bleachers, and we got it, and it looks so beautiful, dude. And that was it. It was just this little thing, pivoted, and it turned out to be, I think, even better than what we had originally. So like those were things that I learned during the shoot. Like, I'm not gonna settle. We're gonna figure out we're gonna figure out a way, and we figured out a way. There's a scene on a bar that needed to look full, so it's like, oh shit. again, shot this on a 100 millimeter, super tight, and we were just, I guess they were all friends and family, so we called them in. We had like 30 people, and by the time we were actually going to shoot the scene, people started leaving. So I guess we ended up with like 12, 15 guys. So we just amassed them together and started, as we were tracking, we would grab people from one side and put them on the other and put them on the other and put them on the other. So it looked full as they were traversing this concert live thing on this nightclub. And when I look at it now, it's pretty cool, man. Like it looks like a full concert, and
Yeah.
it's not, bro. It's like 12 guys. That's it. Um, yeah, the movie turned out quite nice. But again, just little things that I would change. Like in post production, I would change so much stuff. The color correction, I would have changed so much stuff in terms of the finishing and control of the image and how that could have come about. And also, technology has changed so much. The movie released in 2022, but we recorded it. We finished it in 2019.
What do you think you learned from that process?
Well, I learned that I can do anything. Like there's nothing I can't do. And even when things are going to shit, there's always a way out. Like the bleacher scene, there is an answer to the problem. You just have to, like for me, I had to I just had to think for a second, like what can I do? How can I solve this right now? And the answer was, change the lens, and it doesn't matter if it's not the same brand or lens. If it changes, it's a different look. It's a different look. Nobody really notices. It's like, especially for like the whole scene was shot on the 50. So it's like if I had that 50 and then maybe a 30, like might see the difference and be like, oh, it looks kind of off, but it was perfect for that scene. It really worked out incredibly well. So, and it was a very collaborative effort. Like a lot of people chipped in, and a lot of people had great ideas and great solutions to the problems, which is also something that I see now in my workflow, which is, I think, a great director or a great department head, like key position, is really great when they're open to listening and make the right choice. I don't think a great director or a great cinematographer is a guy that has all the answers, but is a guy that can choose the right option and is open to listening. Maybe the makeup artist comes in and has an idea. It's like, oh, I see this shadow here. And then I can listen to that and be like, oh, actually, you're right. I didn't notice that. I think that makes me a better DP than being like, get out of my face. You're just the makeup artist, or you're just the PA, or you're just this. You can't talk to me about my craft. I like people, and I learned that from this movie because everybody was doing like 4 or 5 different jobs. The DIT was also helping with camera, was also helping. You know what I mean? Like it was like this nice group of friends that joined together for 3.5 weeks to shoot a movie, and we relied on each other. We really
Yeah, it's
relied on each other.
collaboration, man. It's the best part. Yeah,
We
no,
couldn't have done
that's
it without collaborating, So at the end of the day, the director's making the director's choices, but I pitched in so many ideas for this movie. That doesn't mean that I'm directing. I'm just proposing, and then the director chooses. Like, actually, yes, actually, no, and it happened so many times. It's like, yeah, Eduardo, that's a great idea. Let's go that way, or I don't think it'll work because in my head I see it this way. That's fine. That I think that's my biggest takeaway from the film.
in closing. I'll ask again, what do you think were the biggest takeaways from that process that really sort of, informed maybe where you are today? Was there a situation where you came away from thinking like, if you were to watch the film now, or even back then, did you think, oh man, I could have done this differently. I could have done that differently. Let me go learn that technique or read more about this. What were some of the key things that you think you picked up after that you think, well, if I'm redoing this again,
Yeah.
aside from maybe the technology and things like that, aesthetically, like you talked about, you learn to run a department, or you're at a point in your life where you feel secure enough where people can bring ideas to you and you can be like, you know what? Yeah, let's try this. What are some
Yeah.
other takeaways that you would say you picked up from that project?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that I really felt limited by in that project was I lacked a lot of knowledge on lighting, like fixtures, So I was reliant 100% on the G&E team. Right now, I know, I might not know the exact name, but I know that there's a fixture like this, and I know that there's a thing that goes on the ceiling that you can clamp, and it's this cardellini thing where you can. So if I think it's just knowing the tools and the workflow of a set really makes a big difference today. Same with like post-production workflow. I am heavily involved in post-production workflows now. Like I edit myself at this stage as well. Like I do a lot of stuff where I go in and I dive into the editing and I color grade and I handle and I do the finishing on some of the projects. So knowing what it takes to make things happen and knowing what tools are available, even if you don't know the name, like I didn't know certain names, I still don't know certain names, but would have helped me a lot because I would have been like, this is going to take 2 hours to set up and we can solve this problem by pointing a light to the ceiling, versus having to wait to rig like all the bulbs and all this shit. So it was
I sense a theme here, Eduardo. You don't like to wait.
I don't know. I don't like to wait. And especially I don't like to wait for things to that are not necessary. I've kind of like let go of a lot of baggage, things that I thought, like I need the big HMI because that's what I see people doing. I don't need the big HMI for most things. Now I know. And I needed to use the HMI to know that I didn't need the HMI. You know what I mean? Like a super ridiculous thing that I've done in my career that it haunts me at points. So I shot a commercial owning the red. My head was stuck in such a mode that I needed to like the anamorphic bug and like the full frame VistaVision bug.
Yeah, I remember this story. I tried to talk you out of it.
I didn't use my camera. I didn't use my equipment to rent a red Monstro so that I could shoot VistaVision on anamorphics for this commercial.
Yes,
it doesn't
I
make
remember.
any
I remember the
sense.
said commercial that I produced.
Yes, it doesn't make any sense. So now, does it look beautiful? It does, 100%. It's beautiful flares, the anamorphic thing. It makes no difference. Not for this spot.
The client came back and said, "Give it to us in 16 by."
Yeah, 16 by 9 and then 9 by 16. I'm like, fuck.
I remember us having that conversation because it was during a lockdown. Because remember, we had to color it.
That's right.
Lockdown.
That's right.
Because I remember this specifically. I remember exactly where I was. I was in Ohio producing that project for Netflix, and you called me, and we had done the budget, we had crewed up, we had everything in place, and then like I don't know what happened between you and Sherman went to the scout, and all of a sudden it went from like, hey, we're gonna shoot this in our red to like now we want to shoot on a Monstro.
I know,
with
dude.
Anamorphic lenses.
But again, it's one of the things that if I hadn't done it, I wouldn't have known. Now I know. Yeah. I don't need the VistaVision thing, and I don't need any of that.
Yeah.
Unless I really need it.
And I remember saying to you, like, are we shooting landscapes? Are we shooting, what are we shooting that you need anamorphics? No, but it's, it's the space, and I gotta have it.
Yeah, that's what I mean, like you want to shoot with the 18K, you want to put the thing on the like you want to shoot the big overhead thing.
Yeah. No. I agree. I think for me too, it's like, something that I'll probably get into more and more over the show. This is for the audience, that the fact that I came from this production background before I really had big opportunities to direct. I mean, I'm, always doing my docs and stuff, but I saw so many commercials that I worked on where DPs and directors would ask for things. And in a lot of cases, the money was there, but you would put so much time and resources into getting said piece of equipment or said resource in terms of people, like I'd be on these shoots like in the middle of nowhere, like in Texas or in the Grand Canyon. And it's like, oh, we need this 360 head. Let's fly it in from Florida, or a tech is going to fly from Florida and you got to pay their travel, hotel, per diem.
Yeah, it's wild, bro.
And then you see the end product of the project, and the shot either never made it because the agency producer was in charge of the edit. And luckily in the UK, directors get post-production. In the US, they don't on a commercial. But like you'd be like, man, I put so much time and effort into that shot and lost sleep. and it either didn't make the edit or something just happened where you didn't see it reflected on screen. I can't tell you how many times that happened to me. I'd say between 2010 and 2015, when I was traveling and doing all these massive jobs, where like you would just be like, oh man, we spent $20,000 on that shot. Like, you know, everybody had to have it. The client paid the overage. Like, you know, the client spent extra money because we talked them into this, and then it ended up being like, oh no, we didn't need it, or sorry, it didn't make the cut.
Brutal. It's brutal.
Yeah,
it's brutal.
it's really deflating. So I really appreciate you saying, like, I had to kind of walk the walk to realize that I didn't need something, that I could make it just as good with either the resources you had or limited resources. And I think that that's a really important lesson, because I think too, like, a lot of people who will see this in terms of people that I will share this with are business owners who aren't in the film business, right? They just run other businesses. They're entrepreneurs. And I think that that's a lesson as well, right? You make investments in things that you end up going, Jesus, I didn't need to do this.
I'm going to share this quick story before we leave, but I interned for this photographer in LA called Jost Loomis, right? And I did a lot of work for him. And this guy's very unique because he was one of 3 assistants for this photographer, world known. I'm sure you've heard of him. His name is Helmut Newton.
Yes.
So this guy's one of 3. Helmut Newton had 3 assistants in his entire career. Just Loomis is one of them. So his, like, just the wealth of information and stories and things that exist in his life around Helmut Newton is unbelievable. And Helmut Newton basically redefined photography and fashion photography. There's like a before and after Helmut Newton, right? And he was telling me jokes about Mario Testino. That Mario Testino would be in Miami and they were both shooting. One was shooting Vogue, the other one was shooting Harper Bazaar or whatever, you know? And Mario Testino had like light heads and packs of just flashes all over the place and all this people and like assistants and people holding flags and things. And Helmut Newton had one guy with a pole and just a strobe with a bare head. That's it. No diffusion, no nothing. You know, he would just use the sun and the location. And if you look at Helmut's photography, you can tell that it's intentional in the framing and the location, and he's utilizing the space in a way that it's so unique and so captivating versus some of the Testino work. You're like, all this shit, but you could have done it with just one light. You know, you don't need all that shit. All the big guys, when I've watched their stuff, they're all like trying to reduce to like just one source, one little, that's it. Like they're done with a big, you know, footprint stuff. They're like, you know, one source on the window, that's it. Boom.
I have one last question I just thought about as you were telling us. So if you could reframe, right? The name of the show is ReFramed. So if you could reframe your career and your trajectory to this path, what do you think you would change? What would you do differently? Anything?
Yeah, I think I would ask more questions. Like that, you're your own break. Sometimes my head would tell me like company 3 is out of my reach. And it took me a long time to reach out to company 3 and be like, hey, how much would you charge me to color grade this project? And they're like, oh, you know, and then not even that, like just flat out tell them like, hey guys, I have $1,000. Would this be enough for you to color grade this stuff? And 9 times out of 10, people say yeah. Or a version of a yes. So I was like, shit, I could have asked more top level people to get involved in my career earlier had I just sent the text. You know, had I just asked the question. I think like there's a lot of limits that I put on myself to like, but I'm not there yet, or you know, that's a little bit like later versus now. It's like that's you know, there's no distance. It's just an email away. That's it.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for being honest and vulnerable and being willing to share. One of the reasons I really wanted to do this is because for such a long time I've been having these conversations with people, but I think I was at a point in my career development, like you were saying, you would ask more questions. I think for me, I don't want people to see behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
you know,
it's tough, bro.
It is.
It's an acceptance of where you are. Like, it's like, okay, I'm honest. I'm here. That's it.
For sure. And there's a lot of insecurity in that. And I think also too, coming from where I've come from, still trying to learn, still trying to grow, you tend to want to let people see behind the curtain. And I think in most cases now, I think the more vulnerability actually helps.
I agree.
You can,
Yeah.
so I want to thank you for kind of, not only making time to be the first guest, but to kind of believing in the idea and the concept and for sharing. So thanks a ton, dude. And well, I'm sure we'll be having other conversations in the future, about other projects that we've all kind of come across. So
Yeah.
I'm deeply grateful for your friendship and for your collaboration.
Likewise, huh? You've got some great stories to tell. I'm honored to be your friend, and I've learned so much from you. You have no idea. You've become like a mentor in my life. I've told you this before, and I've learned so much. And you've been a great friend and an incredible support throughout my career.
Happy to do it. I always love to see good people thrive.